The day I found the Google Doc started like any other. I was making coffee when a notification popped up on her laptop, where we usually left tabs open. She had logged out in a hurry, and the screen still showed the document list. One title caught my eye: The Perfect Breakup Plan. I clicked it and read. At first, it felt like a prank. The document was tidy and broken into steps. The language was clinical, almost instructional. It described how to slowly withdraw, make the other person feel grateful for any kindness, then record moments to use later. It suggested staging small fights, saving selective messages, and creating screenshots that could be presented out of context. There were notes about timing, about what to say in front of friends, and about when to go public. Everything felt deliberate. I closed the laptop and stood in the kitchen for a long minute. I did not yell. I did not confront her. I sat and tried to sort my head. The person I knew in our everyday life, laughing on the couch, sharing breakfast, did not match the planner in that document. I felt a distance, like something had shifted under my feet. The next hours passed oddly. I moved through small tasks, washed a cup, checked the mail, and watered the plants. I thought about leaving the document unread, about saying nothing and walking away. But the doc had a pull I could not ignore. I opened it again and began to collect the pieces that mattered. Screenshots, timestamps, the way she wrote about crafting the story. I saved each page as a PDF, labeled every file, and copied text into a private folder. I did not tell anyone. We had dinner that night and spoke like nothing had happened. Her voice was light, and she asked about my day. Over the next few days, I watched her differently. I paid attention to small gestures. I noticed the timing of certain messages and the careful phrasing of her social posts. They looked natural, but there was a mechanical quality beneath the surface. I collected proof not just from the document, but from patterns. I saved conversations where she had exaggerated or edited the truth. I archived moments where she suggested one thing in private and said another in public. There was a mixture of grief and clarity. Grief for the trust that had been rearranged. Clarity because the paper trail spelled out intent. The document was not a fantasy. It was a plan, and it placed her actions into a shape I could point to. I began to feel less aimless and more methodical. I organized dates, compiled copies of messages, and made backups. I made sure nothing could disappear. I planned to use the truth to protect myself, calmly and clearly. I did not act on impulse. Instead, I practiced patience. Not the weak kind that waits and hopes. The steady kind that holds evidence and watches. I wanted the truth to do its work without me adding noise. There is a power in being calm when the other side expects drama. At night, I would lie awake thinking about the first line of the doc. It read like a promise to herself. Control the narrative, make them doubt, never show the real plan. I understood then that my role in her design was never meant to be mutual. She had laid out how to make me the lead in a story that would damage me. That realization changed something. The next few days, I acted like everything was normal. We still went out for lunch, still watched shows together. I even let her pick the movie one night. She looked comfortable, relaxed, completely unaware that I already knew everything. That calm, almost polite mask she wore started to make sense after reading her plan. She wasn't being distant by accident. She was practicing. I started documenting more carefully. Every chat, every text, every time she twisted a detail during an argument, I kept a copy. She liked to bring up things I supposedly said, and now I understood why. She wanted to build a pattern that made me look unstable. I let her believe it was working. When she'd ask things like, "Why are you being quiet?" I'd just say, "I'm tired." She smiled once and said, "You've been hard to read lately." I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. She didn't know I was reading her script too. A week went by like this. She started posting vague things online. Stuff like, "Sometimes people pretend to care just to control you." A few of her friends commented, offering sympathy. I recognized the setup. It was right there in her Google document. The stage was being prepared. I didn't interfere. I remember one night, she accidentally left her phone on the counter while taking a shower. Normally, I never touch her phone, but this time, I checked the recent photos. Screenshots of our conversations, cropped just enough to change the tone. One text I sent about a bad day at work now looked like I was complaining about her. Another was cut in half to make it seem like I was cold and dismissive. She was building her story piece by piece. That night, I made my move. Quietly, I emailed myself copies of every file I had. Her Google Doc, screenshots, even photos of her edited messages. I kept everything in cloud storage, locked with two-factor authentication. Then, I made a simple plan. I didn't want drama. I wanted accountability. At work, she often talked to people higher up in the company, using charm to get ahead. But there were rumors too, small things about her bending the truth or spreading stories about coworkers. She never knew when to stop playing games. And now, I had the kind of evidence that could make those rumors real. The next morning, She was cheerful, sipping her coffee. I was thinking, she said, maybe we should take a break. You seemed off lately. Her tone was sweet but detached, like someone rehearsing lines. I looked at her and said, if that's what you think is best. She blinked, surprised. She expected me to beg, to argue. That was part of her plan, to emotionally drain me, so I'd chase her. But I didn't give her that scene. Later that day, she texted, you're not even trying to fix things. Do you even care? I typed back, I care about the truth. Then I put my phone away. That evening, I submitted everything to HR. No emotion, no story, just facts. The Google Doc, her edited screenshots, and the notes about manipulating coworkers. I didn't accuse or explain. I simply attached the files and wrote, you should be aware of this behavior. It involves company reputation. Then I waited. For 3 days, nothing happened. She acted normal, still posting, still smiling. Then suddenly, she didn't come to work. Her office chat account went silent. I knew before anyone said a word. When the email from HR came later that week, it confirmed everything. She'd been terminated pending investigation for falsifying communications and breaching conduct policy. She must have realized who exposed her, because that night she texted me. Can we talk? Please. We can fix this. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. You already did, I wrote. You fixed my life by leaving it. She didn't respond. When the HR notice went out, words spread faster than I expected. I didn't tell anyone, but people talk, especially when drama finds its way into a workplace. Within a day, her story cracked open. People started connecting dots, realizing that a few of her private complaints about coworkers matched up too perfectly with phrases from the Google Doc. Her closest friends there, the ones who used to believe every story she told, started distancing themselves. They didn't confront her publicly, but the shift was obvious. No more cheerful greetings, no more gossip sessions over lunch. She became invisible in places where she once held attention. I didn't enjoy it. It just felt deserved. That Friday, she called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge underneath. So this is it, she said. You ruined my career because of one stupid document? I stayed calm. You wrote it, not me. It wasn't serious, she said quickly. You weren't supposed to see that. It was just me venting. I let a silence hang there before replying. You wrote how to fake abuse, how to emotionally manipulate, how to ruin someone's reputation. That's not venting. She exhaled sharply. You're acting like I killed someone. No, I said. But you tried to kill who I was. You just did it with words. She went quiet for a while. When she spoke again, her voice softened. I didn't think you'd ever turn on me. I didn't, I said. You turned on yourself. I just stepped out of the way. That ended the call. I thought that was the last I'd hear from her, but I was wrong. Over the next week, a few of her old friends reached out to me. Not to gossip, but to apologize. They said she'd started spreading half-truths about me months ago, painting me as controlling and emotionally unpredictable. One even said, I feel stupid now. She was rehearsing us all. That hit me. She hadn't just been preparing for a breakup. She'd been building an audience for it. Meanwhile, she was trying to salvage her image. On social media, she wrote vague posts like, people love to believe the worst without asking questions. But the tone was off. The comments under her posts weren't sympathetic anymore. People had seen too much. A few even asked directly about the document. She ignored them. I didn't post a thing. Silence was my statement. Then came the twist I didn't plan. The HR department had forwarded the report to a professional network she'd been part of, warning them about her conduct since it involved company data and personal messages. She wasn't just fired, she was blacklisted. One evening, I got another message from her. I can't get another job. Everyone's turned on me. Are you happy now? I typed slowly. I didn't want to destroy you. I wanted to protect myself. No reply. The next few days felt strange. Quiet. For the first time in months, I could breathe without wondering what story was being built behind my back. There was no need to defend myself, no urge to explain anything. The truth had done the work for me. Then, a mutual friend sent me a photo of her. She was out with some of her old friends. They were sitting together, but you could feel the tension in the image. She wasn't laughing, wasn't leading the room anymore. She looked small, out of place. That was when I realized revenge didn't come from what I did. It came from what she wrote. Her own words were the knife that cut through the version of herself she tried to sell. After everything unraveled, life started to feel strangely still. I wasn't celebrating or gloating. I was just free. For the first time in months, I didn't have to overthink every conversation or check what version of me existed in her head. I could just exist quietly, without defense. But of course, peace never comes without echoes. One night, about 3 weeks later, she showed up at my apartment. No warning, no message beforehand. When I opened the door, she looked different. Not dramatic, just worn out. The kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from realizing your own reflection doesn't match what you thought it was. She said softly, "Can I come in?" I hesitated but stepped aside. She sat on the couch, her eyes wandering around like she was remembering how everything used to be. "You redecorated," she said quietly. "I just moved a few things," I replied. She nodded. "Then, I've been thinking a lot. About what happened." I didn't answer. I wanted her to speak first. After a long pause, she said, "I didn't mean for it to go that far. It started as this dumb idea to protect myself. I'd been in bad relationships before, and I thought if I could control how things ended, it wouldn't hurt." "That's not protection," I said. "That's preemptive destruction." She didn't argue. "I know," she whispered, "and I'm paying for it." There was something sincere in her voice, but I'd learned not to trust words that came only after consequences. Still, I listened. She went on about losing her job, her friends avoiding her, and her parents asking questions she couldn't answer. She wasn't angry anymore, just lost. Finally, she looked at me and said, "Do you hate me?" I thought for a moment before answering. "No, but I don't see you the same way anymore." Her eyes dropped to the floor. "I keep wishing I could undo it." "You can't," I said quietly. "And honestly, you shouldn't. Some lessons only stick when they leave a mark." She nodded slowly. "I guess I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." I believed her, at least partly. Maybe the apology wasn't enough, but it was something. When she left, I didn't feel anger or satisfaction, just closure. I stood by the door for a while after it shut, realizing how different silence felt now. Before, it used to mean tension. Now it just meant peace. Over the next few months, I rebuilt quietly, cut off contact, changed numbers, focused on myself. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about recovery. Every so often, I'd still hear things. A mutual friend mentioned she moved to another city. Try to start fresh. No one really knew what she was doing, and honestly, I didn't care. But karma has a way of circling back in unexpected ways. About 6 months later, I got a message from someone who used to work with her. They said she had applied for a new position at a partner company, one that required reference checks. My name came up in the background check since I was listed as an emergency contact from before. I didn't lie, and I didn't exaggerate. I just sent them the same folder of evidence I'd kept. No explanation, no extra words. A few days later, I got a short reply from HR. "Thank you for your honesty. We'll handle it appropriately." I closed the email and didn't think about it again. Sometimes, revenge doesn't come from rage or plotting. It comes from doing nothing and letting truth exist where lies once thrived. And I guess that's the quiet kind of karma people underestimate. The one that doesn't shout or destroy, it just balances things out. By the time spring rolled around, I'd started sleeping better, eating better, living slower. The past didn't follow me around anymore. It stayed where it belonged. And as for her, she became a name I once knew, attached to a story that no longer defined me. Still, now and then, I think about that Google Doc title. The perfect breakup plan. She was right about one thing. Our breakup was perfect, just not in the way she imagined. Months passed, and life finally began to feel real again. Not dramatic, not intense, just steady. I'd moved to a new apartment closer to downtown, started running in the mornings, and slowly rebuilt parts of myself I hadn't realized were worn down. It's strange how quiet life feels when you're no longer walking on emotional glass. I didn't think about her much anymore. Every trace of her, photos, messages, playlists, was gone. Not deleted in anger, just released. Like cleaning out a drawer that used to be full of clutter. Then, one evening, while scrolling through an old email account I rarely used, I saw her name again. It was a short message, sent weeks ago, buried under spam. The subject line read, "Last thing I'll say." I opened it. "I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I just want to tell you that you were never the problem. I was chasing control because I was afraid of losing it. You didn't deserve what I did. I hope someday you're happy and that you never have to meet someone like the version of me you knew." No manipulation, no excuses, just honesty, finally. I didn't reply, not out of spite, just because there was nothing left to say. Some conversations don't need an ending. They just fade quietly when the truth has already been spoken. I closed the email and sat in silence for a while. It felt like the final page of a book I didn't need to reread. Over the next few months, my life kept moving. I met new people, focused on work, and started taking weekend trips. But somewhere deep down, I carried that experience like a small scar. Not one that hurt, but one that reminded me to look closer, to listen carefully, to trust what people do more than what they say. One evening, at a small gathering, someone brought up a conversation about manipulation in relationships. People shared stories, some dramatic, some painful. When it came to me, I just said, sometimes the best revenge is silence. Let the truth work on its own time. No one asked for details, and I didn't offer any. Because what she never understood was that her plan, the perfect breakup, didn't break me. It freed me. Her attempt to control the narrative gave me a chance to step out of it. She handed me every piece of evidence I needed, not just to protect myself, but to see her clearly for the first time. That clarity was the real victory. I don't believe in cinematic karma, the kind that crashes down in dramatic ways. Real karma is quiet. It doesn't need applause. It just balances things when the lies run out of road. And in her case, it did. The last I heard, she'd moved back to her hometown. Rumor had it she was keeping a low profile, trying to rebuild her reputation from scratch. I wished her no harm. If anything, I hoped she learned from the wreckage she created. Some people change only after the world stops giving them shortcuts. As for me, I kept living. Simpler, lighter. I learned that peace isn't something you chase by confronting chaos. It's what shows up when you finally stop feeding it. The funny thing is, sometimes I still think about that one line she wrote in her document. Control the story before he can tell it.